The French and Indian War was a conflict between Britain and France.
Hello.
Oui, oui. It was caused by disputes over land in the Ohio River Valley. The French saw success at the beginning of the war because they're strong Native American allies.
Oh no.
The war concluded in 1763 with the signing of the Treaty of Paris. This agreement between France and Britain gave the British all the land east of the Mississippi River. As colonists began to migrate westward into their new territories, conflict arose. The Native Americans in the area created disputes over the land. An example of a dispute is Pontiac's Rebellion, where Pontiac led a series of attacks on British colonists in hopes of getting them off their land. King George saw this conflict and thought it was best to allow the natives to have their land. The king passed a proclamation of 1763 which forbade the colonists from migrating west of the Appalachian Mountains. This angered the colonists greatly because they just fought and won a war over that exact land. The colonists believed it was their right to own that land since the war was fought on their soil and using their soldiers.
The next major impact the war had on the colonists was the taxes imposed onto the colonies by the British. Before the war, the Americans had solitary neglect, which means that the British left the colonies alone to govern themselves.
Govern yourselves!
Yay! After the war, the British found themselves in even more debt, and they found it only right to tax the colonists since they were the cause of the war.
I need money! You give it to me!
They passed the Sugar Act, which taxed goods like coffees and wine. The Stamp Act, which taxed items like paper. And the Townshend Act, which passed imported items like paper, tea, molasses, and glass. The colonists saw the taxes as unjust since they had no representation in Parliament.
No taxation without representation!
This caused some colonists to smuggle or boycott certain goods. Some even went as far to tar and feather tax collectors. This led to the Boston Tea Party, where the Sons of Liberty dressed up as Native Americans and dumped 45 tons of tea into the harbor.
Tea! The final impact the French and Indian War had on the colonists is the increased presence of British soldiers in the colony. King George brought more British soldiers to the colonies to protect the new territories obtained from the war and also to protect colonists from harassing tax collectors. Since more soldiers required more monies to house them, feed them, the king decided to pass the Quartering Act. You feed them! This made it the colonists' duty to provide shelter and food for the soldiers. The colonists were already obsessed with the increased presence of the soldiers, but forcing them to spend their own money to shelter and provide food for the soldiers really angered them.
Feed us.
No! The impacts the colonists have from the French and Indian War will lead to greater tensions between the British and the colonists, ultimately resulting in the Revolutionary War.